Welcome back to Stormi Tells Ghost Stories Haunted Savannah on my Girls Rock Productions channel. This week we will visit 4 more restaurants and pubs: the Pirate's House, River Brewing Company, the Olde Pink House, and Tondee's Tavern. I will start with the pub situated in one of the oldest buildings in Savannah, the Pirate's House. The oldest buildings in all of Savannah, the Pirate's House is just about 250 years old with a sketchy past to match its weathered exterior. Rumored to be the oldest building in the entire state of Georgia, the Pirate's House has seen the darker side of Savannah since the 1700s. From Shanghai to spectral pirates, the Pirate's House has it all. A block away from the rushing waters of the Savannah River, the Pirate's House is a tavern that was built in 1794. Pirates and sailors alike would meet at the tavern for a drink and a good time. It was a popular destination among seafaring men and soon became the local hotspot for brews and brawls. Located in one of the most famous spots in Savannah, the place where the Pirate's House was built was naturally inviting for sailors due to the thriving seaport town Savannah had become. Underground tunnels were soon dug to make the shady happenings of the Pirate's House even more discreet. During World War II, the building fell into disuse and lost its nautical spark. In 1945, the property was acquired by the Savannah Gas Company, and the building was scheduled to be demolished. It was saved by Mrs. Mary Hillier, the wife of Mr. Hansel Hillier. Mary, along with a few other of the local lovers of history, took it upon themselves to restore General Oglethorpe's vision of Savannah. In the process, the Pirate's House received a loving restoration, ensuring that it would endure the years and be available for generations to come. The establishment reopened as a tea room in 1953 and boasts a fabulous menu with a cozy dining space. It changed faces again and once housed a jazz club before it became the bar and restaurant that it is today. But, as with any location in Savannah, all is not just beauty and happiness. During the height of the Pirate's House popularity, author Robert Louis Stevenson visited the building for some sort of inspiration. He left feeling the fires of creativity and soon wrote Treasure Island in 1883. The novel became immensely popular, and it even created the stereotypes about pirates that still exist today. A description of the book is as follows. In the book, Captain Flint and the haunted pirate house are mentioned. Flint was a ruthless pirate that captained his ship. The Walrus would go around the world collecting a bounty of riches and treasure. Captain Flint then buried his treasure on a deserted island and murdered his crew. In true pirate fashion, Captain Flint created a map of the location of the buried treasure with an X to mark the spot. He then gave this map to his first mate, Treasure Island character Billy Bones. Eventually, Bones died of a stroke and the map fell into the possession of the book's narrator, Jim Hawkins. It's said that Captain Flint's life ended in Savannah many years after the story of his lost beloved treasure. His love affair with the rum led to his eventual death. It's even possible that he died in the very inn that inspired Stevenson to create his character. The treasure room of the haunted pirate house still contains early editions of Treasure Island to this day. Now, in the early days, the pirate house was a haven for seamen, criminals, and other less than saintly figures. Many men found themselves in the bar for a brew of two and woke up on a ship hundreds of miles away off the coast. This was a process known as shanghaiing and left countless men as indentured servants to the sea captains that kidnapped them. Leading from the Pirate's House rum cellar into the river street is a musty tunnel. It's been covered over since, but it was once used as a transport tunnel for these unsuspecting men. Even more, the Pirate's House was well known for drunken brawls, fights, and even murder. Savannah is a place of turmoil and unrest when it comes to the spirit world. It's no surprise to hear when yet another location is ridiculously haunted. This popular tavern is no different. Many visitors have reported strange ghostly activity during their visits to the Pirate's House. Even the employees of the bar have had their own strange happenings, including glasses falling from the shelves on their own, and visitors' visions of apparitions wandering throughout the dining room. Workers have reported feeling the eerie presence of entities and even coming face to face with the spirits of seamen who enjoyed the tavern in years past. The sounds of heavy boots have been heard moving about the building after coming from the closed-off tunnels that run underneath the building. Spirits of sailors are the most commonly reported occurrence, and for good reason considering the past of the building. One of the more popular ghost stories may just be a tall tale, but it is interesting nonetheless. It tells of Captain Flint from Treasure Island. As the story goes, Flint died inside the pirate's house and decided to stay. Could there have been a real-life man that Captain Flint was based off of that actually did die in the tavern? Perhaps, but that's a story for a different time. Our next stop is a brewery that once housed a hotel and a makeshift hospital, Moon River Brewing Company. Savannah is a town known for many things: Spanish moss, beautiful parks and squares, history, and ghosts. When it comes to ghosts in Savannah, few places are as renowned for the numbers of ghosts and hauntings as the Moon River Brewing Company. For over 10 years, the staff and patrons of the Moon River Brewing Company have reported seeing ghostly beings, shadow figures, and many other paranormal events. Thanks to visits by TV's Ghost Hunters, Ghost Adventures, and Expedition X, people from all over the country have been interested in the ghostly inhabitants of the Moon River. It's even one of the most popular stops on haunted pub crawls around Savannah. The building that houses the Moon River Brewing Company was built in 1821 by Eleazar Early. It was first used as the City Hotel. Savannah's prominent and wealthy residents regularly gathered there to share in the fine spirits which were normally imported from all over the globe. A number of notable people stayed at the City Hotel throughout the years, including James Audubon, who was a guest at the City Hotel for over 6 months. The Savannah City Hotel hosted its last guest in 1864, right before General Sherman claimed the city in his famous March to the Sea during the American Civil War. The building also served as a hospital during Savannah's numerous yellow fever outbreaks. Hundreds of people, mostly children, reportedly died on the upper floors of the building during these outbreaks when the building was functioned as a makeshift hospital. It is not surprising that child spirits are often seen in the Moon River Brewing Company. In more recent times, the building, which houses the Moon River, has been used as storage space, an office supply store, and it actually sat vacant for about 20 years until it was purchased in 1995. The Moon River Brewing Company came about just a few years later, and that is when the ghost stories all started. One of the areas in the Moon River Brewing Company that gets a lot of attention is the basement. The most famous ghost at the Moon River Brewing Company, the one the staff calls Toby, is seen in the basement moving silently through the shadows. The basement does certainly have more than its share of ghostly encounters with the living. Many people who go on the ghost tours through the Moon River made a stop in the basement. There are many claims of people's bodies going cold on one side and hearing voices, only to have the experience end when they leave. There is a long-standing theory that ghosts are left behind when a person dies a tragic or violent death, and the Moon River Brewing Company has seen many of those. The hundreds of children who died of yellow fever are the most numerous deaths that took place here. Though it was mostly children who perished, many adults also died on the top floors of the brewery. Dying young and sick is always a tragedy and might just be enough to leave behind a few ghosts. The hospital was used quite a few times as yellow fever kept hitting Savannah. This meant that an impromptu hospital has to be constructed in order to treat and house all of the children falling sick. The amount of people who died of yellow fever during the separate outbreaks is alarming and tragic. More vindictive acts of violence include a shooting of a known town vagrant. In 1832, a doctor by the name of Dr. Philip Minus shot a drunk man named James Stark inside of the then hotel. James Stark was known as a drunk and troublemaker who seemed to have a reputation for insulting people and being hated by the people of Savannah. After Dr. Minus shot Stark, he insisted that he had seen Stark going for his own gun first. Dr. Minus was quickly acquitted of the crime as Stark was not liked in town and Savannah needed a doctor. An unpunished murder could be enough to leave a man who was known for being angry in life behind to cause more trouble and death. He is said to roam the main floor and also the second floor of the brewery. One of the biggest acts of violence that occurred in the walls of the brewery took place in 1860. The Civil War had not yet started, but it was already clear the hatred for Yankees in Georgia. A Yankee by the name of James Sinclair came into town and decided to stay at the City Hotel. The residents of Savannah were furious at the thought of having a Yankee in their midst. The people of Savannah tried to pressure Sinclair to leave on his own accord, but he refused. The anger and hate of a Yankee in town was enough to cause a mob to form in the streets of Savannah. The lynch mob marched through the city and into the hotel. They dragged Sinclair into the streets outside of the building, where they stripped him and beat him. Sinclair lived through the incident, but was beaten near enough to the point of death that the violent experience might have caused him to come back and haunt where his tragedy took place. There have been many reports of ghosts and shadows on the upper levels of the building. There is a lady in white, people being pushed down the staircase, people being chased out, and all sorts of paranormal activity. The fourth floor of the company seems to have a dark energy. It is known that the top floor was used for the makeshift hospital and that many people had died from yellow fever. There were many deaths that occurred on this floor. Many people would lose their battle with yellow fever and die without mercy. This is the energy that you will feel if you go to the top floor. Many people believe that the ghosts that are seen on this floor are those who were taken by yellow fever. The experience is from that of how they died and suffered before they died. There have been many events that can only be described as paranormal activity. There is just no logical explanation otherwise. Ghosts are messing with people at this brewery. The Moon River has a nice dining area. However, there is some unusual activity. One gentleman states that he had been on a date when his lady friend excused herself to use the restroom. She would not return for nearly 15 minutes. When she did return, she was crying and shaken up. She stated that the bathroom door wouldn't let her out. The stall was locked, and even with all her weight, she could not get it to open. She would call out for help and beg to be let out and pushed one last time. The last time she pushed it, it opened right up. The waitress would see that the lady was upset, and the young woman would state what had happened. The waitress then stated that the ghosts tend to hide in the bathroom and do that to guests, and that she wasn't the first one to experience that phenomenon. Another couple was on a date, and the lady jumped up, her face white as snow. She stated that someone had grabbed her leg twice. She thought it was her date, but she saw that his hands were visible. She stated that she could feel what she thought was a hand grabbing her thigh and her leg. This is why many people steer clear of the dining area. The next restaurant I'm going to talk about is one that had seen a previous owner kill himself in the building, the Olde Pink House. The Olde Pink House is one of Savannah's many taverns, but for over 300 years, the bright pink mansion was known to locals as the Haversham House. The Olde Pink Tavern sits on the infamous Abercorn Street, right on Reynolds Square. Abercorn Street is home to more than just one haunted house, and like much of Savannah, the Olde Pink House is very haunted. Built in 1771 by the influential Savannah family, the Havershams, Jim Haversham was one of Savannah's earliest settlers and one of the wealthiest men in Georgia at the time. He was a fierce British loyalist and was behind the push to ban slavery in Georgia. Haversham was one of the pioneers of Georgia's cotton industry and was one of the men to send Georgia-grown cotton back to England. Haversham had 3 sons, and unlike their father, they were anti-British. This angered their father. They all joined the Sons of Liberty, a colonial separatist movement. James Jr., Haversham's eldest son, decided to use his financial connections to fund the Americans during the Revolutionary War instead of fighting directly. As for the home, James Haversham had the house built in 1771, but due to the outbreak of the Revolutionary War, construction had to be delayed. The British occupied the home during the war and fueled the Haversham's children's angst against the British. Then, years after the finish of the house in 1789, James Sr. died in the house. His eldest son also passed away in the home, as well as a few of the enslaved people that the Havershams kept in the home, many of which were children. They would often fall ill of yellow fever. The building has passed through a couple of hands and survived some of Savannah's worst times. The Haversham house survived a massive fire in 1796, while 200 other buildings nearby burned to the ground. This was due to the brick construction of the home. In 1812, the building became a branch of Planters Bank, the first bank in Georgia. The home was also witnessed 3 wars and being seized by occupying forces twice. Union troops even used the home as barracks when they occupied the city in 1864. Jim Williams, one of Savannah's leading preservationists, who we've talked about quite a few times by now, helped restore the home in the 1960s. The famous bright pink color of the home was actually an accident. The Havershams intended for the house to be white, but since it was built with red bricks overlaid with white plaster, the rain and humidity caused the bricks to bleed through the paint, which gives the home its pink color. This caused some ridicule from the neighbors, and the Havershams were forced to repaint the house white continually to restore the intended color. But unfortunately, the pink constantly returned. In 1920, one of the later owners decided to embrace the tone and painted the house pink, cementing the Olde Pink House in history. With the deaths that occurred in the home, it's no surprise that there are quite a few resident spirits living in the Pink House, one of whom is said to be the ghost of James Haversham Jr., who is rumored to have hanged himself in the basement where the tavern is now located. Legend tells that he learned that his wife was having an affair with an architect that he had hired to design the home. He went down to the basement, completely devastated by her betrayal, and hung himself. Another story tells that he hung himself due to his sadness over his wife's death. Another story tells that Haversham died in 1799, with his cause of death being his slowly declining health. This story holds a bit more historical truth, since Haversham is buried with his father and brothers at Colonial Park Cemetery. The issue with the suicide story is that people who committed suicide were not permitted to be buried in consecrated ground at the time. Some believe that he did in fact commit suicide, but it was covered up to stave off the shame that would have been brought onto the family. The Olde Pink House restaurant is said to be haunted by the apparition of Haversham Jr., who is reported to frequently appear in the restaurant wearing colonial garb. Patrons see Jr. hanging around people watching. Other guests to the restaurant have had conversations with this man, thinking he was a reenactor, only for him to vanish right before their eyes. Since the building was converted into a restaurant in the 1930s, employees have continued to see the spirit of James between October and March. He's known to stay away from the summer heat. Employees report that he straightens table settings and puts chairs into their place. His spirit has also been blamed for lighting candles that are placed throughout the restaurant. Several other spirits are known to occupy the home as well. One is a friendly Revolutionary veteran. He's known to visit the bar and ask for visitors to raise their glass for a toast. One of the Haversham's descendants is also known to join in on the fun at the bar, even ordering drinks. As the night ends, he walks into the cemetery and disappears just as soon as he nears the Button family memorial, where his body is buried. A female spirit has been spotted on the second floor of the Olde Pink House as well, sobbing. Former house servants have been witnessed throughout the residence as well, wandering aimlessly. Children have also been reported playing around the home. Could these be the enslaved children that died due to the yellow fever epidemic that swept through Savannah? These children have also been known to taunt staff and play tricks on guests. Some spirits have even taken a liking to locking women in the bathroom, which led to the restaurant staff to take the locks off the doors. Other strange occurrences, like menus standing on end, glasses being knocked over, and even full-bodied apparitions, have all been reported. I've saved the most haunted restaurant in all of Savannah for last, Tondee's Tavern. For ghost aficionados, there's no better place than Savannah. Pretty much every building has a story and every plot of land a haunt. Tondee's Tavern is no different. Filled to the brim with spirits, it's truly one of Savannah's most haunted locations. Named for one of Savannah's earliest and most successful taverns, the Tondee's Tavern building dates back to 1853. The original Tondee's was located at the corner of Broughton and Whitaker Streets. Savannah's Sons of Liberty, an early American group of patriots and soldiers, used to meet at the original Tondee's Tavern regularly to unwind. Legend even tells that the original Declaration of Independence was read aloud in Georgia for the first time at Tondee's. The current Tondee's Tavern building is at 7 East Bay Street, right in the former home of the Central of Georgia Railroad Bank in 1850. It was taken over by General Sherman, and it was made the city headquarters of General Cherry during the American Civil War. The office of Bryan and Sons, which was the largest trader of enslaved people on the East Coast in the 1850s, were also located upstairs in the building. The structure also housed the offices of the most powerful and popular lawyers during the 1850s. The ground floor of the present-day Tondee's Tavern building was used by the Central Railway and Banking Company. On the upper floor were the offices of Joseph Bryan, the largest slave broker of the time in Savannah. Rumors state that the enslaved people were once held in the basement of the building, although this claim has never been verified. Regardless, pens used to hold the enslaved people were built right outside of the back door in Bain Lane. Now, let's talk a little bit about the namesake of the original Tondee's Tavern. Peter Tondee was a native of England in the mid-late 1700s, and he arrived with his father and brother in Savannah in March of 1773. When Tondee's father passed away just a couple of months later in July, he and his brother were entrusted to Paul Amatis, manager of the fledgling silk trade. Custody of the sons transferred to the local magistrate named Henry Parker, but they ultimately ended up with the evangelist and founder of the Bethesda House for Boys, George Whitefield. Peter, who was only 16 at the time, apprenticed under the popular Savannah carpenter James Papa. Tondee then went on to build the first building of the Christ Church and a 2-story brick courthouse in Wright Square. Later, he owned and operated his very own bar, Tondee's Tavern. It soon became a minor hotbed for revolutionary politics, where men of the time would come to discuss pressing matters over a brew. Two provincial congresses met in the tavern, the last of which oversaw the creation of Georgia's first government. On August 10, 1774, Georgia patriots met for the first time in response to British policies. Only a few days before, the royal governor, James Wright, had issued a proclamation that forbids gatherings from meeting to air their grievances against Great Britain. But, as patriots do, they met anyhow, with over 30 representatives from Georgia's various counties gathering in the tavern. The meeting was a result of several occurrences over the previous year, starting with the Boston Tea Party in December of 1773. Parliament's response to the Tea Party was to shut down Boston Harbor and to dissolve the elected Massachusetts government. All the colonies were outraged. Knowing that Parliament could do this to Massachusetts, it would not hesitate to do it to any of the other colonies as well. After Peter's death in 1775, his wife, Lucy, took over the management of the tavern and continued to welcome patriots until the British occupation of Savannah in 1778. Lucy herself died in 1785, and in 1796, the first of Savannah's many devastating fires burned the Tondee lot and the original bar down to the ground. Even though the current tavern is not located in the very first Tondee's Tavern building, it seems as if the haunts have traveled to stay with Tondee name. Tondee's reputation for ghosts is almost as strong as the cocktails poured at its dark wooden bar. Walking through the large glass front doors of Tondee's makes it easy to feel like you are stepping back into the past. The beautiful dark wood interior envelops you as you walk through the same steps of the Patriots before. Some of the unexplained manifestations at Tondee's Tavern include strange temperature fluctuations with no apparent cause, disembodied voices, and an overall feeling of being watched. One spirit, named Catherine, is said to haunt Tondee's and was a regular of the establishment back in the 1800s. She's known to mess with the staff and visitors, moving their beer mugs or whispering into their ears. One visitor to Tondee's told of her visit to the historic establishment. It's like walking into a time capsule. You can sense the history and the energy stored in the building. While I was there, I sat down for a couple of drinks at the bar and waited for my friends to arrive. After a while, I checked my phone to see if she was okay. If she was on her way, whatever was going on. That's when I felt a tap on my shoulder. Then I turned around smiling because we hadn't seen each other in so long. No one was there. I got this tap on my shoulder, plain as day, and no one was behind me. It was a pretty relaxed day. It wasn't too busy. No one brushed up against me trying to move through the crowd. I have no explanation for what I felt that day. All I know is that Tondee's Tavern is haunted. Like, really haunted. That concludes this week's video of Stormi Tells Ghost Stories Haunted Savannah. I hope you enjoyed learning about some of Savannah's most haunted restaurants and pubs, the Pirate House, River Brewing Company, the Olde Pink House, and Tondee's Tavern. Remember to like and subscribe to my Girls Rock Productions channel. While you are here, feel free to check out some of my other playlists. Now, I was supposed to be getting the live covers and lessons back up on Stormi Teaches Music last week, but I had caught an upper respiratory infection, which caused it to have to be postponed to this week. I do those live streams Mondays and Wednesdays at 1 p.m. Eastern, with the covers on Mondays and the lessons on Wednesdays. I also plan on starting a new playlist in January, Stormi Talks True Crime, on Thursdays at 6 p.m. Eastern, so stay tuned for that. If you are ever in the Wilmington, North Carolina area, sign up for the Walking Ghost Tour or the Wilmington Spirits and Spirits Pub Crawl through U.S. Ghost Adventures. For me or one of our other amazing tour guides to tell you some of the darkest stories the port city has to offer. If while you are in the Cape Fear area, you decide to stay or get your next vacation home, check out my Moving to Coastal Carolina channel on YouTube and contact me since I am a licensed realtor here in southeastern North Carolina. Don't forget to vote in the comments for the haunted European city you want to learn about next month. You can vote between A. Paris, France, B. Edinburgh, Scotland, C. London, England, or D. Rome, Italy. Tune in next Tuesday at 6 p.m. for the next installment of Stormi Tells Ghost Stories Haunted Savannah. Until then, have a great week and stay safe.